This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let we go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. We've got a lot to get to on the podcast today as Hayden Howerton will break down SMU falling to Penn State in the first round of the college football playoff, 38-10. But before we get to that, do want to remind you guys, subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. Now it's the off season. It is also portal season. So $1 for your first week, then stay with us throughout the first year, and that gets you a little bit of a discount on your month-to-month rate. You get all the portal scoop, what's next for SMU as far as the roster construction. We'll break all of that down for you guys at ontheponyexpress.com, and a bunch of you have jumped on board with us. So we wish the run of SMU football season would keep going, but it is now time to start turning our attention to next year, believe it or not, and how the Mustangs will be built by Rhett Lashley and his staff. So join us over there at ontheponyexpress.com. This podcast is presented by our friends at Thomas Auto Group. Appreciate their support of the podcast, and there is still that last-minute opportunity to go up 75 and visit their Ford, Subaru, or Volkswagen dealer and get employee pricing when you mention ontheponyexpress.com, and that's good for any pre-owned or new vehicle. So if you're looking to make a big splash, head up 75 to McKinney and check out the Thomas Auto Group, and they'll get you all hooked up with a beautiful vehicle with great service as well.
Jingle all the way.
Ollie, I need you to take the customers on a tour of our new dealership.
I sure can. Here I go.
Lease the 2024 Crosstrek Premium for just $299 a month, or get 0% financing for 48 months on any 2024 WRX. And during the 2024 Subaru Share the Love event, Subaru is donating $250 with every new Subaru leased or purchased.
Good boy, Ollie. Visit us today at Brandon Thomas Subaru McKinney and BrandonThomasSubaru.com.
Look, SMU football was able to come away with quite the season, and that is something that can't be lost in all this, and we'll get to breaking down the game in just a minute, but I do want to tell you guys a little bit of programming notes. Going to try to take the whole rest of the week off as far as podcasts go, kind of recharge, reset, and we will have a portal pod as well that will follow this on the feed, or I guess might even be above it, depending on when that gets done. But we will have you guys covered on the two new commitments for SMU football, linebacker Kyle Firm and edge rusher DJ Warner, at least as of the time of this recording. Those are the only two. And we'll break all that down. We'll break down what's next on the roster and things like that. So don't miss that as well when you're running around doing your errands and things like that. Right before Christmas or the holidays and things like that. But do you want to shout out SMU basketball before we get to Hayden Howerton? They went up to Boston College and at 11 a.m. probably played in front of a crowd on TV as far as SMU fans. That was very, very slim on the CW. And they won 103-77. So a huge game, just hitting the 100-point mark in an ACC contest, I think is a kind of a wow moment, at least, regardless of BC being 7-5, 0-2 in the league already. That is just kind of how you want to finish out your 2024 ACC basketball games. They'll play Sunday, December 29th in Moody Coliseum at 1 p.m. Central against Longwood before hosting Duke January 4th. So SMU basketball now squarely on the bubble. It's early in the season, but, Matt Cross has really been able to take over lately and really step up in a big way. Boobie Miller had 18, and really down the stretch, we were kind of watching it in the press box. It was 47-40 at the half, and before you know it, SMU put up 56 in the second half and held BC to 37. Look, when this team wants to, they can put up points and put them up in bunches, and they've done that lately, especially Matt Cross. He's been playing at a really, really high level. He was named ACC Player of the Week last week. So they keep this rolling. They're going to have some tough tests ahead of them, but everything's in front of them. If you can get probably a little bit above 500 in the ACC, you'll have yourself squarely on the bubble, and then go from there as far as making a splash in league play. So kudos to Andy Enfield and his staff for getting it done on Saturday. And without any further ado, we will now get to our conversation with Hayden Howerton, probably the last one of 2024. What a run it's been breaking down this SMU football team. And so now we'll go to Hayden Howerton. Now happy to be joined by Hayden Howerton. Hayden, this has been an incredible year for both of us doing this podcast together, and an incredible run for the Mustangs, but it did come to an end in the first round of the college football playoff up in Beaver Stadium in Pennsylvania, as SMU saw their season put on ice, just kind of like all the snow on the ground, in a 38-10 loss. What are your overall takeaways from that game that we watched on Saturday?
It was a disappointing end to an otherwise really exciting and inspiring first ACC season. I mean, all good things must come to an end at some point. I was really just hoping that we'd be able to roll all the way on to Phoenix to go play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. The best way that I can look at this game and honestly talk about it is a missed opportunity. And I'm only saying that because Penn State looks like a bunch of Greek gods out on the field. And you take away a few turnovers, don't spot Penn State 21 points, and we've got a different ballgame on our hands. But it's just a tough way for these seniors to go out. Red said after the game that the farther that they get from this moment, the more special they'll realize that A, the game was, and B, the overall season was, and kind of how the trajectory of the program, while it's been changing for a long time, this was the first time that you could actually see the effects of all the hard work that all the previous generations of SMU Mustangs have put in. And I agree, but it is just a really hard pill to swallow, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, the score looks rough. You know, for the people who didn't watch this team all season long, you have people trying to make the argument that, SEC bias, SEC should be in the playoff anyway. But you look at this team's track record of what they did in the season and how they took care of business against, frankly, really good teams in the regular season. This team had every right to be in this game yesterday. And while it didn't go the way that we wanted, it's great experience for the future, because SMU will be back. There will be another opportunity to go play at a Penn State, Texas A&M, crazy loud playoff environment. And hopefully this game served as a learning experience for this team. But you look at what they did this season, 11 wins, second year in a row, back-to-back conference championship appearances, ACC Coach of the Year for Coach Lashley. And really, SMU is cooking with the transfer portal, as they have since 2018. So I have a lot of confidence that this team will be able to compete for another spot in the playoff next year. But it's going to be a long offseason, as hopefully this team learns from their mistakes and they go into the offseason hungry and ready to go next year.
Yeah, and as we get into breaking down the game, and I mean, I don't think we're going to have the all 22 and things like that, and the butt view. I mean, guys are hurting right now. It's not the time to try to pull that out of them, but we know what we saw up there in Beaver Stadium. And, you know, on offense, like we talked about going into the game, if SMU could limit turnovers, I mean, they were going to have a chance. And in like, even the turnovers that they had went the absolute worst way you could possibly draw it up. And, you know, whether it is a missed protection that leads to the first pick six, and, you know, maybe Kevin should have eaten the ball anyway, like Rhett said after the game, or a pick six that I don't really know where the ball was going at all, or, you know, trying to, you know, make a play there, bang, bang play, and a great play by DeLuca on the third interception. I mean, it just couldn't have gone any worse as far as the turnovers, and you get a lopsided score when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week until we were blue in the face about protect the football and start fast. And you look at this game, and it was 28-0 at halftime after those 3 first-half turnovers. 14 points were spotted directly on interceptions returned for the touchdown. And then on the third one, that led to another 7 for Penn State. And so you spot Penn State 21. You take all that away, we're really looking at 7-0 at the half. And, hey, while you don't want to put up a goose egg in the first half, if it's a 7-point ball game, hey, we're in that thing. But unfortunately, the last two games, it's been 52-7 combined score in the last two first halves for SMU. And I'm just really not sure what happened after the Boston College game, because we have yet to start fast since that game. We go on the road at Virginia. We didn't score early. You had the Cal game that was a little bit of a slow start. Obviously, Clemson was terrible. And then Saturday. And so you talk about the pressure. And yes, the interceptions were tough. Yes, he had guys in his face. But we also talked about as one of the keys of the game, don't let Penn State's defensive line take over this game. And Penn State went out, 11 tackles for loss, 3 sacks on Kevin. And you know that the pressure got to him. Kevin was pressured on 46% of his dropbacks, the worst that it's been all year. And all of his turnovers, there was some kind of pressure on the play. And so I worry about that. That was something that I think was very uncharacteristic of this offensive line. And then on top of that, this crowd played a huge role. We talked about how when you start fast, don't turn the ball over, you're going to take the crowd out of it. And Penn State gets the ball. They go 3 and out, or they get a quick punt. SMU takes the ball, drives down the field, and you could tell the crowd was being taken out of it. And the 4th and 1 incompletion, which was brutal, it very easily could have been a touchdown, kind of slightly brings them back into it. Penn State stalls again, and then we throw the pick six, and they're all the way back in. And so I'm a little bit disappointed on the procedural penalties that related to the crowd. I think it could have been solved by going on the silent cadence like we talked about last week. And look, when you're trying to clap in the shotgun, it does not work in front of 106,000 passionate Penn State fans, because I've been in those situations before, whether that be in the National Football League or whether that be playing at Michigan. You have to have some kind of silent cadence or some kind of rhythm to where, hey, even if you don't want the center looking between his legs, have the right guard look behind him where the center is making his calls, and then have Kevin give the leg, the right guard gives the tap, and then you go to the head nods. Because if I'm Abdul Carter and I know we're going on the clap, I'm not watching the ball. I'm watching Kevin's hands. And as soon as he's bringing his hands together, I'm gone. So you're taking away your snap advantage, and you're really at a disadvantage at that point. Death Valley is going to be the same thing when we go to Clemson next year. And so this is definitely something in the offseason that I think needs to be worked on with all of the quarterbacks, all of the people who might be snapping the ball next season for us, because it's going to be something that shows its ugly head again. But you look at this offense, and I think we were moving the ball fairly well. We just couldn't finish drives, as we only came away with 10 points on 5 red zone trips. And unfortunately, that reminds me of the BYU game. The 4th and 1 red zone turnover on downs is eerily similar to the first one against BYU. It was also targeted to Matthew Hibner, which I'm not attacking Hib. Hib has been one of our best players late in the season after RJ Maryland went down.
Ball was behind him, and it floated.
100%. But I fully believe that if we convert and either we kick a field goal, or best case scenario, that's a great ball and it's 7 points for the Mustangs, and this is a much different ball game. Yeah. So turnovers in crucial moments. The D-line, unfortunately, took advantage of us, and then you bring the crowd back into it. Just overall a rough day for the offense.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sit here and say every interception could have been avoided, or it's all on Kevin. I mean, look, the first one, they, between Justin Osborne to Ja'Kai Clark to Logan Parr, however that's supposed to work out there, somebody didn't pass somebody off the right way, and
he was untouched. He was untouched.
Yeah, he was untouched. He was untouched. So somebody's in the wrong there. And look, at that moment, with how bang, maybe Penn State was kind of playing up a little bit pre-snap. Maybe Kevin's got to eat that. But, Rhett mentioned after the game, the play before, they were one block away from breaking, a big run or things like that. So you mentioned, I think, something that is somewhat lost in this. And this, I am not trying to find the positive here and turn this into a positive fest, because you lost 38-10. But SMU had the ability to move the ball, and they really did. I felt like, and eventually Penn State was able to completely pin their ears back and not even worry about, okay, if SMU runs it, fine, whatever, let them have the 5 yards. But they were going to get pressure on Kevin Jennings. And look, Abdul Carter, credit to him. He is by far, I would say, the best defensive end SMU faced all year.
Yeah.
And that includes Donovan Ezraku and TJ Parker and those guys. I mean, he was just a freakazoid. And once he got going, it was really hard to take him out of it. And I didn't mind the play calling that Rhett called. I think, to your point about the silent cadence, I mean, that's something that I don't know. They should have gone to, and maybe at that point when they realize it, maybe it doesn't matter because you're throwing interceptions, you're doing those things. But I think long-term in the offseason, you got to hope this is that turning point for Kevin Jennings when it comes to interceptions. Because, that second one in particular, I mean, that's a backbreaker. I mean, that is, you've got everything ahead of you. If, credit Penn State, they got pressure, it was in your face, you were backed up, first pick six, cool. Second one, that was a bad ball. I have no idea where that one was going. And those are the type of things that in these moments, they just can't happen. And Kevin is, go ahead.
That one was super similar to the Clemson one on their sideline.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, where it's just like, I don't know where that ball is going.
Yeah. And Kevin is a large part of the reason why SMU's in the college football playoff. He is a early Heisman type of player for next year, whether people want to believe that or not. That's just the offseason buzz that's going to be around him. But he's going to have to find ways to live to fight another day is the most important thing. Like if he's chucking balls out of bounds, you're never going to hear me really complain about that because he's going to make enough plays to get the offense moving well enough. Next year's a whole different discussion. That's for another day. But I was kind of disappointed from the standpoint of, I think behind the scenes, we know what the buzz was around Kevin and kind of all the, and it's the horrible part of everything that goes on in college football right now. But you have a sweet new Cadillac deal that comes out the week of, which takes 5 minutes to film, by the way. Like, it's not a time suck, but it's just, okay, comes out, you got a sweet NIL deal coming. It's just one of those things that, I mean, there's so much pressure on these guys, and in particular Kevin, and something he's going to have to continue to grow and learn from. And on Saturday, it was not the best showing from him for those three kind of /4 plays. And that's unfortunate because, I mean, even if he just wears one of those pick sixes and that's it, I mean, this game had a chance to be really different.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality with NIL now is there is more pressure because guys are getting paid and there's a new expectation that if you're making this much money, you need to perform that way. And I hate to hear the stories of guys supporting their families and things like that based off this money, but that's the truth. That's how NIL is starting to go, to where this is now looking to be a means to an end for some kind of guys, to where they're sending money to their parents and things like that. And that's great.
Yeah.
That's great for these guys that have grown up and doing that for their family, but it just creates a weird vibe in college football. But back to Abdul Carter, just one more thing about it, and then I'll move on. When you're the left tackle, and my last preseason game in the NFL, they threw me out at tackle, and it's you cannot block that guy just no matter what you do. It is a very lonely feeling out there at left tackle. And Savion has had his ups and downs this year, but I hope this is a wake-up call to Savion. I think that he's going to have a lot of questions going into the offseason that he's going to have to answer with his work. And he's obviously a very highly recruited player. SMU is glad that they were able to get him in the transfer portal, but you do wonder why Andrew Chamblee wasn't in the ball game, at least at a point. Yeah. They threw Derek McFall in for a couple carries to get him some experience. And I think Andrew Chamblee could have benefited from some experience against an elite pass rusher to at least see, hey, let's see where Andrew's at. Just at this point in his career, his second year in, let's see what he looks like against this guy. But finally, I texted Kevin today. I do feel bad for him. I had heard from guys on the team that he's just getting all these awful DMs from people. But I just texted him. I was like, look, dude, we would not be in this position if you weren't our quarterback. And all the people who want to jump on the board and come for my head for saying that, it's the truth. Kevin changed the whole trajectory of this season when he took over the starting job. And he has a chance to do something really special and try to bring a Heisman Trophy back to the hilltop next year. But there's going to be a lot of buzz about it, and there's going to be a lot of work that has to be done. But his chemistry that he's going to be able to build as the starting quarterback going into 2025, I think it's going to pay dividends for him with our receivers.
Yeah, I think it's a little slept on whenever you talk about the growth that is expected from Kevin. And everybody is going to harp on the ball security or whatever, like on both fronts all offseason. It's going to be miserable. A family show. Almost lost it there. But I mean, he is so fun to watch. I mean, he is worth every penny in exposure, in hype, in excitement around the city. And he's a great, great young man. Like, he really is. And
great family, great
yes.
kids. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I like such a cool story. And it's only just beginning to be written. I'll say this. And again, we'll do another, podcast, whatever, in 2025, I guess, breaking down more of the team in the future. Yeah. But with NIL and with him commanding what he is going to command, he has an opportunity to use some of those resources to his advantage to get better. Not just work with Derek King or Coach Grizz or Coach Lashley or Coach Woods or whoever in the building, Sam Hollander. Like, he can now go out and continue to work with his quarterback trainer or go fly somewhere and go get, completely looked at from arm angles and all the, robotic type of technology and all the things they put on quarterbacks to really evaluate if they're getting the most out of themselves. I mean, that's the reality of what he now can do, and invest some of that back into himself so that he can be the best version of himself next year and have the best shot to obviously lead SMU back to the college football playoff. But also for him personally, I mean, he'll have a real shot at the Heisman next year.
Yeah. That's what I did before my senior year. Is I wasn't making any kind of NIL money. That wasn't really a thing until July. But at that point, it was nothing. But I took the money that I made from my Sewell Infinity dealership internship that I had, and I went out and found some O-line guys that I could train with and get better before, my ultimate final push as a player at SMU. So Kevin is going to be fine. I have no worries about him. He's going to respond in the right way. He's going to get what he needs to come out slinging against Baylor in 25. I mean, I have no doubt that he's going to come out and look like the dude that we need him to be. But unfortunately, on the flip side of the ball, we're going to have a lot to replace. So as we talk about the Penn State game, I don't really have many gripes with this defense. Yes, 38 is what Penn State scored, but 21 of those were off turnovers. 14 were off pick sixes where they weren't even on the field. They played lights out pretty much as long as they could. They minimized Penn State's passing attack and straight up eliminated Tyler Warren from this game. Penn State passed 14 for 25, 136 yards, 1 interception by Brandon Crosley. And then Tyler Warren, Mackey Award-winning tight end, 4 catches, 33 yards. Unfortunately, they just had too many short fields and bad situations to hold up forever. But only 24 points allowed defensively. That gives us a chance to win on any given Saturday against a really good Penn State team. I look at Ahmad Walker and Kobe Wilson leading the way, 10 and 7 tackles respectively. Elijah Roberts came up big in his last game as a Mustang, 6 pressures, 2 sacks. When scouts are going to look at Elijah to be a day 1 or 2 guy drafted next year, they're going to pull up the Penn State game first. And he showed out where he needed to for his football career. But the story of the offseason is going to be, how do we replace all these guys? How do we reload on defense? You're losing Elijah, Jafari Harvey, Jared Harrison Hunt, Mike Lockhart, Corey Robinson Jr. on the D-line. Ahmad Walker, Kobe Wilson are moving on. Jonathan McGill is a graduate. And
CJ Sanders, Brandon Crosley.
Yeah, all of these guys. So there's a lot. There's a lot to look at, but this was just a super special defensive group. Top 5 rush defense in the country, most sacks in the ACC. And yes, you can talk about, the D-line just pinned their ears back and went, but you need great coverage. So they're not just picking you apart as soon as they catch it and throw it. So you're going to miss a lot of these guys, not only for their production, but just the character of men that these guys are and have become through their SMU career.
I had a blast covering this defense the last 2 years because a lot of these guys were, obviously brought in last year and stayed and continued to improve and elevated their game. I mean, one going into this year, the question was, could this group step up into the ACC? And it more than did that. It really shined, and a lot of it just stemmed from straight improvement. I mean, Brandon Crosley was moved outside corner. And I know the pass defense wasn't statistically great, but you have safeties that all returned that got better. You had linebackers that all returned and got better. And you had a defensive line that on the edge returned and got better. And then the interior, they plugged in some new faces and kept rolling. And, I mean, they did not look out of place. Like, I think the issue that I probably have most with how the season ended is two things. The defense isn't going to get their flowers for playing a really, quite frankly, good football game. They had very little help from the offense. I wouldn't say that and I don't know what the final time of possession was, but sure didn't seem like they were on the field all that much. Like time of possession, yeah, Penn State won it by a little less than 3 minutes. And I think that either the common folk or the national media or people on Penn State side that were loving being in our comments, bumping our podcast from the week of. I mean, did that SMU defense look out of place? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. 127 yards passing. Tyler Warren held to 33 yards. I mean, you would have taken that all day. And by the way, credit to Drew Aller because he got out of the pocket on a couple times. SMU finished with 3 sacks on the day. I mean, it could have, and I know this is a game of could-haves, but it could have. They could have gotten 6 sacks. I mean, I would love to look up the pressures just in general on true PFF, but they just brought it defensively, and it's a shame that it was wasted. Because of the turnovers, and you look back on this game, and again, the 38-10 score doesn't reflect how I think SMU's ability to compete at this level should be reflected. Does that make sense? Like ultimately, yes, Kevin throws three picks. He doesn't, they don't convert a 4th and 1 that would have been critical early on. And you end up on a lopsided score. Most teams that give up 2 pick sixes and allow 21 points off of turnovers, the score is probably not going to be a good situation. And that's kind of where the shame is. Like if SMU ends up losing this one, let's just say 17-10. I mean, is anybody saying, "Oh wow, SMU looked out of place," but instead you get 2 first quarter picks, or well, I guess 2 in the first quarter and a half pick sixes. I mean, that's the shame. Like I feel for the guys, and out of all the playoff games that happened this weekend, I feel like SMU wasn't the most competitive because Clemson was with Texas, but I don't think SMU looked out of place at all.
Indiana got boat raced.
Yeah, Indiana, like Notre Dame didn't even have to try.
No,
like with Indiana,
Tennessee basically rolled over as soon as the ball was kicked off. And you talk about the pressures: 21 pressures on 25 dropbacks. That is outrageous.
That's sick.
I mean, this Penn State offensive line had only given up 12 sacks all year long. We had 3 on Saturday. So defensively, not much more you can do to really take advantage of what Penn State was giving you. But Just, a missed opportunity for SMU. Definitely wish that we could have gotten a W, but you look at the season as a whole, it's overall a success. I mean, we talked about way back before the Nevada game of predictions for the season. And I think we both said if we play in Charlotte, not if we win, if we were in Charlotte, we'd be happy with whatever happened this year. And not only do we play in Charlotte, we got into the playoff. Penn State, that was their first time in the playoff as well. Tennessee Volunteers also never been to the playoff. There's all these big national brands that had never been to the playoff before, and SMU was right there too. So certainly a missed opportunity. Wish we could have won, but it was pretty special to at least see the Ponies on the national stage.
No doubt. Well, before we get to our season superlatives, I do want to remind you guys about our friend Mark Villasana, Northwest Insurance Agency. He can help you guys out to find where your insurance is costing you too much, whether it's auto, home, business, bonds, fleet, auto, life insurance. He is a family-owned business that can help you through all of that. And he's a proud SMU alum and supporter of SMU football. Give him a call, 214-352-5656, and he'll hook it up. He'll make sure that he walks you through all your options and coverage rates and see where you may lack protection, where he can do a little bit better for you. And plus, on top of it, if you're an SMU fan listening to this, you'll meet another Mustang. So win-win there. Email him if you'd like as well, Mark, MARKV @NWAgencies.com. All right, this is actually, Hayden, I'll have a confession for you. Out of all of the things that, as a reporter, that people want to hear from you about postseason wise, this is probably one of the things I dread doing the most for a couple reasons. It's the end of the season, so the season is over. That's it. And on top of it, I am not a believer of the trophy participation award world that we are living in. But man, it's hard to do this on some levels because you're always going to leave somebody off. You're always going to be like, all right, well, this guy could have also gotten it. So anyway, let's get to our season superlatives.
I know. I could have thrown like 4 more awards in here to try to reward certain guys. But I'll ask you first. I'll get your answer first, and then I'll give mine. So we start off biggest surprise player for 2024.
Okay. I'm going to go with Kevin Jennings because look, I said this during fall camp that it was a quarterback competition and got roasted, whatever. People didn't want to believe it, but this is a program built on competition. Like Ty Hawkins is going to come in. Keldrick Luster got action in. Tyler Aaronson's on the team. All those things. Those guys are going to compete and do what they can to try to push Kevin. That's the culture. And by the way, before I talk about Kevin this year, I do want to say shout out Preston Stone. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome decision for him. Northwestern. He signed, and kept it quiet leading up to the game. He did not want to be a distraction. Rhett Lashley talked about it after the game that they had a discussion as far as his future, and God forbid he gets hurt and can't play out the rest of his career at Northwestern or something like that. I mean, at that point it was meaningless. So really mature discussion, and he was one of the last guys on the field, leaving the field. So a true Mustang. We're going to miss him for sure. All right, back to Kevin Jennings. But part of the reason why he's my surprise pick is because you never knew how the whole quarterback situation would pan out. Would Preston play well enough? Would Rhett Lashley really do that with a guy that he's invested, a lot of time and effort and energy and all those things to move to Kevin at some point? And so on top of that, he went out and absolutely lit it up at an incredible level and deserves so much, praise for how SMU got into the college football playoff and all those things. So I'll go with Kevin, and his play pretty much did all the talking.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that pick. Before I talk about Kevin, I hope Northwestern goes and plays for a Big Ten championship, because really that's what Preston deserves for all the hard work, time, energy he gave to SMU. He's a Mustang for life. But Kevin is the easy pick here breakout year, became the starter full-time, 9 straight wins. And like we already talked about, we wouldn't have been in the playoff without him. We're very fortunate that he's coming back next year because a guy of his talent, caliber in the current poaching era of transfer portal, I'm sure there were many teams knocking at the door to try to get him into their building. But he's not my pick here. You'll see him later on this list. My pick is actually Brashard Smith. 235 carries, 1,332 yards. Guy's going to the Reese's Senior Bowl, and his career high rushing yards in a season was 132 going into this year. Former return specialist. He's probably going to be a day 2/early day 3 guy, in my opinion, in April. And so I look at this season of, dude, I hope Chris Johnson Jr. turns into another Brashard Smith.
Yeah.
But play of the year.
All right, I'm first. I mean, I know what the pick is here, but I mean, Kobe Wilson's interception return. I mean, that was next level, absolutely bonkers. That went for a touchdown. I mean, yeah, I mean, enough said. Like, I mean, truthfully, like that. Another one that's underrated, I'll say, is was it Moochie or Keyshawn that caught that kind of high third down pass against Pitt and then took off with it on the opening drive, and it really kind of set things off. That might be, if there was an underrated play of the year, that might be the underrated play of the year.
That's fair. Me and Kinsey, one of the ladies who works for the football program, I was down on the field. I wasn't working at the time. I was just a fan for that Florida State game. We were jumping up and down the entire time. I mean, I cannot believe that Kobe had that beast quake of an interception return. I actually have Jafari Harvey's blocked field goal to send the Duke game to overtime. That one is the very easy pick here. Yeah. I mean, the whole season would have been different if we didn't win that game.
Yep, 100%. 100%.
Game. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I seeing that one live, being there on the sideline for that, I wasn't on the near side of the sideline to be like that close to it, but I was just kind of standing back there, and I was like, oh, here we go. This is the board's been fun all night. It's about to get a lot more fun now. And what a play. And the thing about that play is SMU's season, in some respects, comes down to that play. It comes down to a Brashard Smith fumble against BYU. It comes down to early turnovers against Clemson. It comes down to early turnovers against Penn State. And I know those are excuses and useless and things that ifs and buts, but like, it's hard to win football games. And the difference between good and great teams in terms of record can be a few plays a year.
Yeah.
And it worked a little bit both ways against SMU this year. So, I mean, the rest of the time, they really, I mean, quite frankly, kind of boat race people.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think in terms of the overall season, that is a lost conversation that until the Clemson game, SMU trailed for like 5 minutes in ACC play?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
That's you're beating the hell out of people.
Yeah. Like you end up needing, a play here and there to, keep, your unbeaten ACC play or this or that. But like, when you trail a total of like 5-ish minutes in the regular season, I think that's nuts.
The Pitt game, I think we predicted like, hopefully we win by 3. It was like 31-7 at halftime.
Yeah, it was a joke. Yeah.
But get on to game of the year.
Okay. I'm going Louisville.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an awesome experience to go to that game. And Penn State fans, like in our comments, post game or whatever, and I don't know if you read them or whatever, but they were like, "Oh, like how about BC or whatever?" Like, look at what Penn State's offensive line did to SMU. Very similar to what BC was kind of able to do without Elijah Roberts. Just a different game. Like in the second half, the commitment to the run, I mean, obviously was there from Penn State. They were wearing down the defense. But the game that I really thought that this was going to look like was the Louisville game. Raucous environment, had a chance and this would have been even better for SMU in Penn State, because not only did they start with a 3-and-out against Penn State, they went right down the field and were on their way to scoring. Well, against Louisville, they went down the field and they scored. And that crowd just got tense. It did not stop being quiet, but it just really was such a impressive win, especially considering, Louisville battles back. They tie it in the third quarter, and then the defense says, ball game, like, we're not giving up another point. And SMU's offense was able to go on a drive, and they win a huge game. And I think Louisville, in terms of the regular season, probably the top team SMU played. They did beat Clemson. I mean,
in South Carolina.
Yeah. We saw what SMU can do to Clemson when they don't mess around and find out. I mean, that game is underappreciated overall.
That game could easily be a game day pick. We know Game Day likes to go to the same places. They've been to Clemson, South Carolina multiple times. That could be an early game day watch game next year. My pick for game of the year here, and you're never gonna see me not appreciate these games. SMU's 66-42 beatdown of TCU. First game with Kevin as the starter. You had the pick six, scoop and score, and the punt return touchdown, all in that game. I think they were all in the first half. And then it always makes the season better to beat the Purple School out west. Whether you're 1-11 or 11-1, as long as you beat the Purple School, it's all right. And then, of course, a notorious early shower for a certain head coach makes it even better.
Yeah, that game was electric. It was just wild. The way fun. SMU was able to just, I mean, what do the kids say? Belt to ass.
Yeah. I mean, because that was right after the BYU game. SMU had a bye week, and then TCU was the next game. And so people had no idea.
First start.
Yeah, no idea what to expect. But biggest disappointment for the season, a little negative here.
I really, man, I mean, you could go either way, I guess. You could go BYU because of, I think, how gettable that game was, and that maybe changes your seeding. Maybe SMU's at home. Maybe.
Could have been.
That, I don't know. Biggest disappointment was Clemson, I would say. I mean, I think that's one that you knew it on paper. You knew it watching Clemson that they are not the Clemson of old. They are not the gatekeepers, and SMU let them shut the gate on them.
I've got no hardware for the season, so it really kind of encompasses what the season looks like. You have an 11-win season. Most years you end up with a ring on your finger, but still no bowl game W since 2013, and we're still waiting on that. I do think if SMU would have beaten Penn State, that they would have beaten Boise State, but I guess we'll see. We don't want to get into the SEC hypothetical football games here, but biggest transfer portal need.
All right. If it's not my money and SMU's able to spend whatever, I mean, defensive tackles is very, very clear. I mean, that's clear. I would say left tackle. I don't know, or yeah, but it is defensive tackle. I mean, the SMU has Savion Byrd back. They have Andrew Chamblee. They have PJ Williams. They signed a top 200 4-star guy in Dramad Odoms at offensive tackle. They got help, and they have depth coming.
Yeah. They have guys that can play multiple positions too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think defense tackle. I mean, you got to go out and get one.
Yeah. I do think SMU needs to go out and get an offensive tackle just to depth, to push Savion and Chamblee and PJ and all of the above. I think they filled holes in the interior. You're obviously losing J.O. Ja'Kai is gone as well. So you're going to need to replace those guys. I think Graham Uter has a great opportunity to step in and be a starter next year, but we'll see. Running back, you get Chris Johnson Jr. Hope he turns into another Bouchard. I still think we need to build the running back room a little bit. Defensive line is where I fall as well. Defensive tackle, while I'm glad we didn't get Bear Alexander, I think that guy's bad news. It is a spot that looks scary going into next year. But yeah, so I think Coach Tibbs will get whatever D tackle comes into the room right, but we got to get the right guys first.
Yep. Yeah, I think you've got to look at what Calvin Thibodeau has been able to do with guys like Tank Booker, guys like Jonathan Jefferson, who is back. I mean, Jonathan Jefferson should have all-world confidence next year. And I could be wrong. I think he got hurt at the end of the Stanford game, and did he miss the next game? I could be wrong, but he's going to be, I think he's got a chance to be an all ACC guy if you give the right credit to guys who maybe don't show up on the stat sheet as much. But
yeah,
that's a great building block to start. He's got some other guys in there, but yeah, the thing with Tibbs is that for the most part, if he gets guys with decent character, he gets the most out of them. He does a good job of like Tank Booker was somebody you could tell was, maybe beaten up, not confident, and ends up being one of, the most confident guys just in general, but also a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah. Jonathan Jefferson, I'm looking at it right now. Between week 7 and 9, he only had 2 snaps. So, yeah, he was dealing with an injury there midseason. But, yeah, no, I think Coach Thibodeau has done an excellent job. He's been one of the biggest pickups that we've gotten, just based on the coaching carousel. And so he's a great asset for us to have. But I also know that Garen Justice, as we've talked about this season, does as good of a job as any O-line coach in the country. Guy was talking about being possibly the head coach for Florida Atlantic. And selfishly, I'm glad he isn't, even though I know for his career and things that he wants to end up doing, I'm sure it would have been great to be a head coach. But thank God he's our guy still. Offensive MVP.
Kevin Jennings.
Yeah, no doubt. That's who I got too.
But Burchard, dude, could you imagine the running back room? You imagine Kevin having to throw it around 50 times a game, going full air raid, basically?
That would have been rough. Yeah, I got Kevin Jennings as well. Enough said.
Yep.
Defensive MVP.
I gotta say Elijah Roberts. I think that BC game kind of almost sealed it or whatever, just from you can see what he does and impacts teams and things like that, just as far as their planning goes.
This is where I wanted to create an extra award. I have Kobe Wilson.
Yeah, definitely a multi-award winning spot right here. We could go on some of these.
Kobe Wilson's my defensive MVP, but Elijah Roberts impacted the games, if anything, based on teams' reluctance to run his way. They had to spend double teams on blocking him. And did you see where he manhandled their left tackle on Saturday? This is big boy football that we played on Saturday, and Elijah Roberts showed up. But 117 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 return for that huge Florida State touchdown by Kobe Wilson. This is a guy that was all over the field this season and was a guy that was at Temple. And I want to say he might have been at Temple late, maybe my last year. And Temple was a awful football team in recent years. They had a few years in the mid 2010s, Matt Rule, that whole deal. It's why I got the Baylor job. But recently they have been a dumpster fire in the American. And we were able to find Kobe Wilson, pluck him out of that, and get him over here. And he was a huge impact for us this season. So I got Kobe Wilson, defensive MVP. But, well, Billy, unfortunately, man, that does it for our superlatives for 2024. So what's next for us? What's next for On the Pony Express with the two of us?
A little bit of a break. We're going to take that break probably into, early 2025. New Year's Eve is, I don't know what day it is. It's next
Tuesday. I think.
Next Tuesday. And Christmas is, of course, Wednesday this week. So we hope you guys enjoy your holidays. The middle of the week ones are always interesting just for everybody, who does have to work a little bit around the holidays. But we're going to kind of regroup on the site. We're going to have a bunch of what's next, portal coverage, because the portal does hit a dead period. So guys can't visit programs, but that does open back up on the 1st through the 5th, which God, pray for these coaches. But it is going to be a wild run. The portal, I believe, closes on the 28th or 29th. So the staff is going to be recruiting. So we'll have coverage of that. And I'm going to try to get through the week without doing another pod, but we'll see. If there's breaking news, I'll come on and talk about it. No big deal. But yeah, definitely need to kind of recharge the podcast voice a little bit, as you guys can see. I will say it was to kind of circle back to the game. I was on a very fun flight over. It was quite the time to have to be sober with Mike Craven. But I wasn't the only one. Bryson DeChambeau was on there, and he doesn't drink. So had a blast getting to know him. And then we were among those that were diverted. And but it just added to the long day. Total first world problem here. But yeah, the recovery is it needs to start kind of this weekend after Christmas. Definitely going to enjoy we'll talk about this in a second. I'm rambling now, but Christmas like traditions. Do you have any like go-to cocktails that you make? Do you have any do you just love to sit around and like just beers and bowl games?
Yeah. Bowl games, beers, Christmas vacation. Those are
Christmas vacation.
Those are my pretty big plans for Christmas. This year though, my family, we're actually taking a New Year's trip. So Kara works on Christmas. I'll be hanging out with some family on the purple side of town, unfortunately, out that way. But no, it'll be fun. This year will look a little different for my family. But yeah, typically just a lot of Christmas movies. I can't tell you the amount of times my mom is like, hey, can you put on Elf for me on the TV? I'm like, sure, Mom. Run downstairs, throw it on real quick. But yeah, other than that, we sometimes have a Christmas Eve party down in Houston with my family. It's a little far nowadays, now that I'm living up here, but just some good memories growing up doing stuff like that. How about you, man? What y'all got?
Yeah, my folks made the last minute call to come into town. And so they are going to be here taking pictures of us with Jack on his first Christmas. So that'll be a blast. But it'll be fun to have them with us as well. And look, my dad actually makes milk punch, which if you've ever been to Brennan's in New Orleans is a famous New Orleans drink. So we'll have that. He makes the best Manhattans you can find. So we'll be into be in our bag a little bit over the Christmas holiday.
I might have to come over then. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah, I'll make milk punch whenever people want it. I will say that I can do it too, and it's good. It's my favorite. If I probably had one drink to maybe like sit around in the holiday season and just drink all day, it might be milk punch. I don't think it's the best thing to drink, but that's my choice.
Are you yes or no for eggnog?
No.
I'm a no as well. Kara
doesn't even enter the household.
Yeah, Kara loves it. I'm not for it.
Yeah, no. The better version of eggnog, in a sense, is the milk punch, and that is available as soon as whenever
we get off tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, we've got to get some golf in. We've got some trips. What else?
Man, try to get some of the retired guys out. Cam Irvin and I have talked about taking a little ski trip, possibly get Ben Sparks in there. And we're probably going to include Ben now in our golf ski boulevard adventures now that he's retired and done with football. But yeah, man, just for now, kind of recharge, regroup. I mean, try to bring some more film study for you guys next year, whether that's position previews or, hey, let's look at what Ashton Genty did great this year, where we just kind of take a look around college football. But we're going to bring you guys tons of On the Pony Express coverage next year, spring ball, stories and interviews, all the best. But for now, guys, thanks so much for listening. Billy, we had such an awesome time this year covering the ponies. And from me to y'all, Merry Christmas, guys. I appreciate y'all.
You nailed it there. Thanks, man, for everything you do. It's been an absolute blast. We're just getting started. Hey, subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com and let us know in the comments what you want to see. That'll help us out as well. And we'll do maybe some mailbag stuff. We'll return that as well. So look, everyone, hope you guys enjoyed this final edition of SMU's 2024 football season. What a run it was for the Mustangs. Thanks for being along for the ride with us, and have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.